Hello, welcome to BEH 217, Behavioral Approaches. Today we're going to be introducing the topic. So this course will discuss multiple approaches to counseling and psychotherapy, providing the key concepts of each approach and explaining the therapeutic process, including goals, the client-therapist relationship, and specific procedures used in the practice of counseling. In general, students cannot gain the knowledge and experience they need to synthesize various approaches by merely completing an introductory course in counseling theory. Synthesizing these approaches often takes many years of study, training, and practical counseling experience. So while this course introduces you to the ideas, it is a process of learning how to apply these ideas to the actual practical application of counseling itself that takes the time. So why do you have to learn more than one approach? Well, when you are presented with a single model and subscribe to it alone, the effectiveness will be limited when working with a diverse range of future clients. The fact of the matter is, especially in the United States, we deal with a very diverse population, and you will rarely, if ever, have two clients who have the exact same personality profile. So by studying the models presented in this course, you will have a better sense of how to integrate concepts and techniques from different approaches in defining your own personal framework for counseling. Each therapeutic approach has useful applications. It is not a matter of a theory being exclusively right or exclusively wrong, as every theory offers a unique contribution to understanding human behavior and has unique implications for counseling practice. Accepting the legitimacy of one model does not necessarily imply rejecting other models. Theoretical pluralism means that multiple approaches can be used to treat a client in a counseling environment. And there is a clear place for theoretical pluralism in our society that is becoming increasingly diverse. So in other words, you can take a little bit from this theory and a little bit from this approach and a little bit from that approach and combine it to become more effective when treating certain diverse populations. And as a therapeutic application, what your job is to figure out which approaches will work more effectively than other approaches with each of your clients. So in terms of integrating perspectives, the purpose of this class is to get an initial overview of the major theoretical orientations, and then as you continue in your education, you will gravitate towards particular approaches by becoming steeped in that approach for some time. The key is to remain open to incorporating diverse approaches into your own personal approach to counseling. An integrative perspective is not developed in a random fashion. Rather, it is an ongoing process that is learned and developed over time. So as we move forward in our education, we see the advantages of certain approaches and how they can be effective with certain problems. And we integrate all of that into our counseling toolbox. And the more tools we have in our toolbox, the better able we are to deal with any number of client-focused issues. Counseling entails far more than becoming a skilled technician. It implies that you're able to establish and maintain a good working relationship with your clients, that you can draw on your own experiences and reactions, and that you can identify techniques suited to the needs of your clients. The most powerful ways for you to teach your clients is by the behavior you model and by the ways you connect with them. To be effective, you also must have supervised experiences in counseling and sound knowledge of counseling theory and techniques. Further, it is essential to be well grounded in the various theories of personality and to learn how they are related to theories of counseling. So all that information you learn in your psychology and behavioral health classes, it's basically going into a giant soup pot, and everything goes in there because what ultimately you need is to have all of that information at your fingertips, because you need that broad base of counseling techniques, because individual clients are individuals and you can't fit one client to one approach if that client doesn't fit that one approach. You are going to use different approaches with different clients based on their needs and their styles and their issues. And that's why it's important to have that broad understanding of all the different approaches. So we're going to start off with one of the most popular, which is the cognitive behavioral approach. And it focuses on how our thinking affects the way we feel and behave. This perspective teaches clients ways to use what they learn in therapy in their everyday lives, empowering clients to take an active stance in their world. Homework, collaboratively designed by clients and therapists, can be a vehicle for assisting clients in putting into action what they are learning in therapy. Social, environmental, cultural, and biological realities often limit our freedom of choice. So increased awareness of these contextual forces enables us to understand the internal forces that influence our decisions and behavior. So when you have someone who, for example, may have a drug or alcohol problem, and you tell them that they need to go to a rehab or they need to move away from the area where these issues are occurring, the reality is that they may not have the freedom to do these things, and you have to, as a therapist, understand that they have limitations in their lives, that they don't always have the choice. Even something, if a woman comes in and she is being forced to marry because of her culture and she doesn't want to marry, that is an issue that culturally, as an American, may be foreign to us, but based on a particular culture may be part and parcel of their lives, and anything that would undermine that is seen as completely intrusive. So we have to be very aware of so many aspects of the world, and it's important to understand different cultures. Then we have feminist and family therapy. Feminist therapy has contributed in an awareness of how environmental and social conditions contribute to the problems of women and men, and how gender role socialization leads to a lack of gender equality. So, for example, when you are looking at situations where the sons are sent to college and the daughters are not, that is obviously gender inequality. However, as a feminist therapeutic approach, you have to figure out ways to help them overcome these issues. Family therapy teaches us that it is not possible to understand the individual apart from the context of the domestic household system. It is not considered an experiential and relationship-oriented therapy. One of the things you have to think about is, again, young women who suffer from anorexia or bulimia is oftentimes they're crying out for their family's attention. What is going on in the family dynamic that this child is literally starving themselves to death to try and get the attention? Now, that's not always why that's happening, but in a lot of cases the research shows that it is a attempt to focus some attention on themselves. Both family therapy and feminist therapy are based on the premise that to understand the individual, it is essential to take into consideration the interpersonal dimensions and the socio-cultural context, rather than focusing primarily on the intrapsychic domain. something that occurs exclusively in the mind. So you have to look at the outside and the inside. The comprehensive approach to counseling goes beyond understanding our internal dynamics and addresses the environmental and systemic realities that influence us. Psychotherapy is a collaborative process that involves both the therapist and the client co-constructing solutions regarding life's tasks. Therapists are not in business to change clients, to give them quick advice, or to solve their problems for them. Instead, counselors facilitate healing through a process of genuine dialogue with their clients. The kind of person a therapist is remains the most critical factor affecting the client and promoting change. Administering techniques to clients without regard for the relationship variables is ineffective. Techniques cannot substitute for the work it takes to develop a constructive client-therapist relationship. The relationship between the client and the therapist is key to effecting change. Then we have person-centered therapy, which is also known as client-centered therapy or the Rogers approach. This approach was developed during the 1940s as a reaction against psychoanalysts. It is a counseling approach that requires the client to take an active role in his or her treatment, with the therapist being non-directive and supportive. This approach places emphasis on the basic attitudes of the therapists. It is rooted in the humanistic philosophy. In client-centered therapy, the client determines the course and direction of treatment, while the therapist clarifies the client's responses to promote self-understanding. The goals of client-centered therapy are increased self-esteem and openness to experience. Client-centered therapists work to help clients lead full lives of self-understanding and reduce defensiveness, guilt, and insecurity. And ultimately, the objective is for clients to have more positive and comfortable relationships with others and an increased capacity to experience and express their feelings. Moving on to choice or reality therapy. The short-term approach is based on choice theory and focuses on the client assuming responsibility in the present. Choice theory, which was formulated by psychiatrist Dr. William Glasser, suggests that all humans have 5 basic needs: survival, freedom, fun, power, and love/belonging, that we attempt to satisfy through our behavioral choices. Although everyone has all 5 of these needs, the drive for love and belongingness tends to be the most important. According to choice theory, it is through the development of close, caring relationships that we can most effectively fulfill our other needs and achieve happiness. Reality therapy helps the client understand that they need to control their own choices and not the choices of those around them to achieve happiness, focusing on the client assuming responsibility in the present time. So it's about taking responsibility for your own experience and not worrying necessarily about the choices that other people are making. Then we have Adlerian theory. Rudolf Dreikurs is credited with popularizing this approach in the United States. It places its emphasis on a person's ability to adapt to feelings of inadequacy and inferiority relative to others. He based his work on Alfred Adler's work, which is why it's called Adlerian Therapy. Dreikurs suggested that human misbehavior is the result of a feeling of a lack of belonging to one social group. Researching children, his overall goal was that students would learn to cooperate reasonably without being penalized or rewarded because they would feel that they are valuable contributors to the classroom. So, a few suggestions for using your textbook. Relate what you are reading to your own experiences. Begin the process of reflecting on your own needs, motivations, values, and life experiences. You will assimilate much more knowledge about the various therapies if you make conscious attempt to apply the key concepts and techniques of these theories to your own personal life. In developing an integrative perspective, it is essential to think holistically. To understand human functioning, it is imperative to account for the physical, emotional, mental, social, cultural, political, and spiritual dimensions. If any of these facets of human experience is neglected, a theory is limited in explaining how we think, feel, and act. So, the categories of theories. First, we have the psychodynamic approaches. Psychoanalytic theory is based largely on insight, unconscious motivation, and reconstruction of the personality. Many theories of psychotherapy have borrowed and integrated principles and approaches from psychoanalytic approaches. Second, experiential and relationship-oriented therapies. Existential approach stresses a concern for what it means to be fully human. We have the person-centered approach and Gestalt therapy. Cognitive behavioral approaches, sometimes known as the action-oriented therapies, because they all emphasize translating insights into behavioral action. Number 4, systems and postmodern perspectives. Systems orientation stresses the importance of understanding individuals in the context of the surroundings that influence their development. Practitioners need to pay attention to what their clients are thinking, feeling, and doing, and a complete therapy system must address all three of these facets. And this is where feminist therapy come in. So, through the book, you're going to be introduced to the case of Stan. And each theory chapter includes a discussion of how a therapist with a specific orientation under discussion is likely to proceed with Stan, our fictional client. We examine the answers to questions such as these. What themes in Stan's life merit special attention in therapy? What concepts would be useful to you in working with Stan on his problems? What are the general goals of Stan's therapy? What possible techniques and methods would best meet these goals? What are some characteristics of the relationship between Stan and his therapist? How might the therapist proceed? How might the therapist evaluate the process and treatment outcomes of therapy? Chapter 15 of your textbook will explain how an integrative approach would work with Stan, suggesting concepts and techniques that draw from many of the models. A number of themes appear to represent core struggles in Stan's life. Here are some of the statements we can assume that he may make at various points in his therapy, and themes that will be addressed from the theoretical perspectives in chapters 4 through 15. Although I'd like to have people in my life, I just don't seem to know how to go about making friends or getting close to people. I'd like to turn my life around, but I have no sense of direction. I want to make a difference. I am afraid of failure. I know when I feel alone, scared, and overwhelmed, I drink heavily to feel better. I am afraid of women. Sometimes at night, I feel a terrible anxiety and feel as if I'm dying. I often feel guilty that I've wasted my life and I failed and that I've let people down. At times like this, I get depressed. I like it that I have determination that I really want to change. I've never really felt loved or wanted by my parents. I'd like to get rid of my self-destructive tendencies and learn to trust people more. I put myself down a lot, but I'd like to feel better about myself. In these chapters, you are asked to think about how you would continue counseling Stan from each of these different perspectives. In doing so, refer to the introductory material given here and to Stan's autobiography as well. To make the case of Stan come alive for each theory, you should view and study the video program DVD for Theory and Practice of Counseling and Psychotherapy. In this video program, Stan is counseled from each of the various theories and brief lectures highlight each theory.